Welcome everyone to another episode of the Conscious Health Podcast. In today's episode, we have an amazing guest that is going to enlighten us
Of the
in
Conscious
the
Health Podcast. In today's episode, we have
an amazing guest in the 7 principles of self mastery. So we are going to go deep into how we can unpack this wisdom, ancient wisdom, into our lives and how can we empower ourselves. And I'm going to share. Thank you, Natasha, as well, for being here, for co-hosting with
Absolutely.
me. And I'm
Absolutely.
going to unpack. I'm going to read the and introduce Enolia so that we can know her better. So Enolia is global leadership strategist, scholar, and ceremonial elder who preaches classical education, corporate leadership, and indigenous wisdom. She's founder of Enolia International and she's the creator of the Empower, Achieve, Succeed Self Mastery methodology. She's the author of the Trivium, The Sovereignty of Worth, and The Alchemical Path of Yoga, guiding leaders worldwide toward conscious coherence and meaningful impact. Thank you, Enolia, for being here. And this is such a pleasure to have you and to understand these principles of self mastery.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to be able to share and to be able to speak to your audience. So thank you for the invitation.
So, well,
I,
let's start with your story. How did it all began? How did you started to go within into these principles, or how did you make conscious of them?
So my story is a very interesting one because I was born and raised in New York City in Queens. And, I did typical thing that everybody does. You go to school. I went to University of Massachusetts, Amherst, and I got my degree in mathematics and, went career hunting and, didn't like being a teacher in terms of like a school teacher. So that wasn't it. And started designing computer networks. Loved working with it. I worked for a small vending firm at first and then ended up being recruited by a Fortune 500 company and started designing networks for their manufacturing facilities and all of their sites. So I started traveling the world, project manager, program manager, and working in all aspects of information technology. And it was a good career and everything. And I went back and got my MBA during that time, but like there was something missing. There was something fundamentally missing, and I wasn't happy. And so, I had to find this missing link. And part of it was me longing for my heritage, right? And here I am, I'm African and I'm also part Native American, and I couldn't find any African elders. So I decided that I was going to look for a Native American spiritual teacher. I just felt like that aspect was missing in my life. So my first grandmother elder, and grandmother is an affectionate term for medicine woman, was
Mm.
grandmother Isabel Mawasaki of the Ojibwe Nation. And I met her at a conference in Omega, upstate New York, for the 13 indigenous grandmothers. So the 13 indigenous grandmothers were these medicine women from all around the world who had this prophecy that basically it is time to share, instead of keeping in secret, the teachings across the world, so that people could start grasping the fact that they needed to be spiritually centered. They needed to start walking this path and be awakened. So one of the elders, Grandmother Margaret, spied out one of her dear friends in the audience, and there was this beautiful woman in like her native regalia holding this serpent staff with this long white hair, and she was gorgeous. She was just this beautiful elder, and I'm like, she's the one. She's the one. And so I like tripped over getting to her. And I got to her and I was like, will you teach me? Will you teach me? And she's like, well, teach you what? And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even think about what I wanted her to teach me. I just wanted her to teach me, you know? So I asked her to teach me, and the first thing that came was herbalism, right? And she's like, well, my girl, if you're really serious about this, here's how to connect with me. I'm like, are you sure? Because I will show up. She's like, I wouldn't have invited you if I wasn't sure. So 2 months later, I drove, what was it, like 20 hours, northern Canada, 100 miles shy where there are no more roads, to this serpent nation of the Anishinaabe tribe and Anishinaabe nation where she lived. And we had a wonderful weekend. We got along. She's like, okay, if you're really serious, next summer, because this was like a August timeframe, I'm going to have a retreat. I invite you to work on the retreat with me, and you have to bring some people. And she said, I'll teach you. And I'm like, I'm a project manager, no problem, right? So I brought 22 women. I'm
Wow.
determined to get taught. And I showed up a week early, and I had helped her during the year to put the retreat together. And I actually write a book about how I put my corporate foot in my mouth over and over again during that whole week because of my sense of entitlement. My sense of, oh, well, that's owed to me. You know, oh, well, I want that, so take it, right? That's what we're taught in corporate. And that weekend or that week and that retreat was an eye opener because she taught me another way to live. And once that can of worms was open, I couldn't go back. I couldn't go back to what I did. So that started a string of two things. One, alternative ways seeking to be happier. And the second thing it also triggered was all of these elders started showing up in my life to teach me. So I ended up learning from Lakota, grandmother Apache, grandfather from the Yaqui Indians. I ended up going to New Zealand and learning from the Waiataha. I ended up going to Peru and learning from the Careless Indians of Peru. I ended up going to South America and worked with the Toltec and the Mayan. And then I ended up going to Africa and I worked with the Sangomas of South Africa. And I was initiated Ovimbundu, and I was initiated in the Careless Indians lineage. So I am like this world grandmother, and I can call myself a grandmother because full circle, I ended up going back to grandmother Isabel, the very first one, who then initiated me as a grandmother in her peer. So that's kind of the whirlwind story. And so it was my work with grandmother Shirley of the Lakota that taught me how to formulate my self-mastery work that is actually leveraged all over the world, and why it stands apart as a few different reasons. It stands apart because one, it doesn't project anybody's religion or traditions or anything in it. It's the work inside. It's the tools that you already possess. So it's nothing external to you. And then the second thing was that she helped me truly organize the work that I had learned through experience. So I don't teach you anything that I haven't experienced. I don't teach you anything that I haven't learned that helps you the way all these indigenous teachers helped me from the perspective of their lineage and their nations. And I truly believe that I am representative of that. So that's how EAS evolved to this methodology. And that's kind of like how my story is.
That is so incredible, the synchronicities of our stories. Did you end up going up to Six Nations? Is that where you ended up in Canada?
Well, it was the Ojibwe Nation that I ended up going, and so I passed through Anishinaabe nations. So all of the
Okay.
different tribes on my way up to the Serpent River Reservation, and
Mm.
knowing that I could stop and knowing that I was in those territories was just unbelievable. It's beautiful drive. It's beautiful country,
Mm.
but it's very harsh country because it's cold there. I'd say 9 out of the 12 months. It's seriously cold.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, that's absolutely beautiful. I completely resonate with that. I was born in South Africa and ended up in Canada. Oh, I ended up in Scotland first and then in Canada. And very lucky to have been born into spiritual family. And when I was in Canada and I went through a very corporate life and then I had burnout and then I was like, I need to go back to my spiritual roots. I actually ended up going, I need a Sangoma to teach me because like the spirituality which is a medicine person in South Africa, the spirituality that I had, I was by myself and I didn't have the connections that I did then. And I was like, I need to find a Sangoma because I need to learn how to work with energy. But I ended up working through it in a different way. And kind of like I did Reiki, I did craniosacral therapy. But then I also started working with an elder on Six Nations. She was Mohawk. Mm-hmm. And I used to do a lot of kind of fire. I still do a lot of fire cleanses. And it was so beautiful in the sense that, so when she was in South Africa, they called her the White Sangoma.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And she was just like, Diane, she says, because she said she did a talk in South Africa and she started off by doing a sage cleanse. And they were like, oh my goodness, you're like the White Sangoma. So Diane and I used to do a lot of work together on the reservation. And then she said, I said to her, like, I don't mind doing the work with you, but I can teach you. And she said, well, she said, well, and I said to her, you do a lot of deep emotional quantum healings as well on Six Nations, which takes in the Six Nations of the indigenous people as well. And she said, well, I said to her, how about we do a trade? I'll teach you, you teach me, and off we go. And she said, well, what I can teach isn't done online. You have to come here. So I said to her, okay. So off I went there. And then we ended up doing she did a whole weekend of teaching with 3 elders, which was pretty incredible. And then we did a sweat lodge. But that was almost kind of like finding, for me, an understanding and a respect for the way indigenous people and a reminder of connecting into nature. And how the balance of that works as well, because I think once we go into that corporate side of things, we forget that we are an extension of nature, and we forget that bringing that balance. And then recently I was invited to Colombia as well, where they had a whole bunch of elders that got together, and usually they just do the North and South Americas, but this year they opened it to the world internationally, and I think people on the council were able to invite a couple of people to go, and I was luckily invited to go. And it's the same prophecy. It's in the sense of you needing to connect the head and the heart. It's actually called the eagle and the condor prophecy that is there. And it's like the head, which is kind of like, which has ruled for the last 500 years, which is that masculine energy, that technology, that process, that structure. But if we only read from here, like the world is like, it's going to become extinct. But we needed to connect into the condor, which is our heart space, which is our femininity, which is that back into our feeling and back into bringing into balance and nature, which was this is very much paraphrasing. But when I started doing a little bit more research, I ended up discovering that the condor is much bigger than the eagle. And although the eagle flies high, the condor is deep. So we need both to bring into that balance. So I love that you've got these principles and this framework to support people through that. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, it's interesting that you're telling me about your experience because mine just reverses yours. So I'm from where the Mohawk Iroquois nations are upstate New York. And I came all the way to South Africa, and I just outside of Vicksburg, I went to the parent cave where the Sangomas live. And how they're in the cave and they're doing nature and the waters and everything else that's right there, and how they connect and how they live. at the heart of their space, their sacred
Yeah.
space, and then being able to meet with them and being able to engage with them and learn from them. And then, Takoza Gogo, it's just like
Yeah.
greeting them and really, really putting
Yeah.
your heart right there. And then having that experience of the energy and everything else. But as I learned, really what it is taking the aspects of everyone and actually just expressing them through you. The bottom line is that there are many roads to the one. It doesn't make one road better than the other, one road right, one road wrong. It makes it different. And so what I've learned, not even just with, the Sangomas or with the Ojibways, or had it been the Iroquois or the Mohawk, because we used to do a Native Nations festival there all the time. And so we'd all come together as many nations, but we came together as one. And so the bottom line for me, and why, and I'll circle it back to EAS, or Empower, Achieve, Succeed, is that because it comes from many nations. And then the underpinnings of it is that these are the things that we should know as human beings. Not as I'm this and I'm that, I'm a man, you're a woman. I'm smart, you're not so smart, or whatever the differences of divide have been provided to us. And we know that those who created divide are masters at it, because we look at each other, yes, we're all unique, but we always look at each other with our differences versus what we have in common. And it's hard to see what we have in common. But when you transcend the humanness of each other and come back to your core, which is I am love, I am light, I am truth, and I'm having a human experience just like you are, that's what we have in common. That's who we are. And that is supposed to shine through the roles that we play, the situations that we navigate, the understandings that we have of one another in terms of cultural experiences. Our light, our beacon, our hearts, our souls, our energy beings, light bodies, are supposed to shine through all of the humanness. And so why I love self-mastery and EAS is because that is the core and that is the center. And then everything else that we do when we work through, when I talk about the 7 principles, are how to keep the nervous system calm in the midst of the chaos. How to navigate situations and recognize that you're stuck in a story. How to be more of the observer than attach emotions to every single thing and then drive yourself to depletion because you're reacting to every single little thing that takes place in your life, and you can't come to your peace, come to your calm. And as we say, and I call it EAS for Empower, Achieve, Succeed, to notice who you are. Notice how you think. Notice how you engage in relationships. Notice how you represent yourself and project yourself. Notice what aspect of your personality is leading you through life, and are you happy with it? Because if you find yourself wanting to make a change in your life, then maybe the aspect that's leading you through life isn't the best aspect of your personality. We all have different aspects of our personality. We have our insecure person, our strong person. We have our angry person. We have our confident person. We have our people-pleasing person. We have our inner child person. Which one of those aspects are leading you through life? And when you find yourself needing coaching, needing more, needing something, then that means that the aspect that is leading may not be serving you the best in the circumstances which you have to face all the time. And I'll take a pause there.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. And I was just thinking through the navigation of your journey. And I was wondering, in this experience with such wisdom that you have from different countries, from different, let's say, communities that you have that experience. How can you, let's say, define for layout people, for regular people, what is the self? What is our self, our true self? How do we recognize that in the midst of the chaos that we have from the patterns, from the rules, from all of those things? How did you recognize yourself throughout this journey when you said, I think I have discovered something, and that's probably the spark that made you realize that you didn't want to go back to your old life, no?
Yes. And that's a beautiful question. And I invite you to even do it, which is when you close your eyes just for a moment and you think about all of the roles that you play and you name those roles. I'm somebody's mother or father. I'm somebody's brother or sister. I'm somebody's employer or employee, cousin, auntie, uncle, whatever that case may be. Put them on like hats. Stack all of the hats of the different roles that you play. And as you stack all of those hats up of all of those different roles that you play, the question is, do you allow those roles to define you? Who defines you? So at that moment, you have all of these hats that you have. Take them off. Take them all off. You're nobody's mother. You're nobody's father. You're nobody's brother. You're nobody's lover. You're nobody's anything. Who are you? Who are you in the scheme of all things? Are you love? Are you light? Are you your own truth? I would say the answer is yes. What is your purpose? To hold your light, to amplify that which is within you. And this is who you are in your simplest definition. You do not have to take on anything else because anything else is outside of yourself. It's the human experience that this being, that this energy descends to. So as you embrace the light that you are, as you embrace the love that you are, the truth that you are, as you choose to amplify it, when you put on those hats, let that which you are amplify through the roles that you play. So at the core of our being, what defines us is this light, this love, this truth, this energy being that I am that shines through the role of mother or father or sister or brother or employee or lover. And then in perspective, we understand that who we are at the core of our being defines the role. The role does not define us. And if you could just feel that for a moment and open your eyes. So if we understand that that's what's supposed to amplify through, and that everything else is a story, it's the story we're navigating through, it's the humanness we're navigating through. And then really, then we can look at limitations, then we can look at judgments, then we can look at what's being projected onto us versus how we're giving away our power. Then we can look at fears because we're looking at it as the observer of the human experience versus, oh my God, this is what's happening to me. How could you do that to me? What are you doing? How could you make me feel that way? None of that, right? We learn to understand that emotions are for a release. We release through emotions, but emotions are not what are supposed to lead us. That when we are navigating through a situation, that we actually come from that place of observance so that we can listen, really listen, and hear what's being said, and then navigate the words that are being expressed so that we can either meet them halfway or define where our boundary is, or understand where the other person's boundary is. That we can recognize that it's a story that's been put in place because there was too long of a silence. Because we love to create stories in silence. If I see Natasha and I said, I haven't seen Natasha in a year, and Natasha pops up and says, hi, Enolia, how are you? And I go, well, you haven't talked to me in a year. What, you were too busy for me? You know, that's the story that we're creating. Oh, she's too busy to me. Oh, she must think she's too good, blah, 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 blah. We love to create stories because there was a long silence. Instead of just honoring there was silence. Hey, Natasha, it's been a while. How have you been? What's going on in your life? How are you doing? Share with me. No assumptions. No projections of what must have taken place or how she must have felt about me because she didn't talk to me. All of the humanness that we love to invoke with the emotion of it. We learn to navigate ourselves first, and then you can navigate through others. When you notice that you fill in the story, then you recognize and are conscious of the fact that I have a tendency to fill in the story. Let me not do that. When you notice that you're stuck in the story and that you're still talking about something that happened to you 2 days ago, then you realize that you tend to be stuck in the story and you circle it, making it more than it may necessarily be. That maybe you should have let it go a couple of days ago. To notice is to take inventory of self. To notice is to understand how you operate within relationships, within self, how you think. Do you take pause in your thinking? Do you pause before you make that decision? Do you always go right when you make a decision? I'm making a decision, go right. I'm making a decision, go right. Well, what happens if you went left? Because remember, we are all patterned. Do you notice that you're stuck in your pattern? And when you notice it, we don't have to change. All we have to do is make a different decision. A different decision brings us left. Left brings us to a different outcome. Different outcome brings us in a different situation. Guess what? We've shifted because we're not doing the pattern. We're not doing the same thing over and over and over again. These are all of the teachings and the learnings that I had within myself that I formalized because I was like, if I'm doing this, there are a lot of other people doing this. And if we're doing this, we can all help each other. Yeah. We could truly help one another because if you know, then you're given a choice. But the key is to recognize I have a choice. I have a choice. And even though you don't want to, the other person that you might be facing doesn't want to give you a choice, you have to be clear that you have a choice no matter who's standing in front of you. You always have a choice. And the number one thing out of all of it is learning how to trust yourself, most of all in the intuition of the navigation. It's akin to walking consciously. When you walk barefoot, you look at every step you're taking because you don't want that nail in the foot. You don't want those prickly rocks underfoot. You tread lightly, right? And the soft grass, you tread a little heavier because you know it's soft and it's warm and it feels good, right? But you're conscious. So noticing is akin to walking consciously, but conscious of self, navigating self. And that gives you just a little taste of the tools.
Yeah. It was so beautiful what I felt through the exercise, because I mean, I was even crying inside because I felt that, um, let's say, hugeness of love and hugeness of no boundaries, so and no responsibilities, let's say, without the hats, without those roles, and you feel that freedom, freedom of being you without judgment, because you don't have stories.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's where we need to go when the story gets too heavy, and we need to put that story down, or we need to navigate past that story. Our goal is to navigate past all of these stories, all of them. As the world is going through the iterations that the world is going through, we should be walking forward on the path, and we can just watch it unravel, but we don't have to participate in the unraveling emotionally to it. It's like, okay, that's happening. Okay, that's happening there. But you know what? I'm still walking forward. It doesn't prevent me from walking forward. It doesn't prevent me from what I need to do. Yes, it's taking place, but each one of us has a role in a contract. And unless you're being called and you're on that front line, because Creator will call us for what Creator wants us to do. And if it's not your turn and you're not being called, step back. Watch what's taking place. Notice. And then also notice who's stepping up to the plate. And okay, that's happening, that's who's being called to it, that's who's fighting it. Okay, my role is, and you know it, you have a knowing within you of where you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to inspire. Many people always ask, well, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? Creator has asked us, and I go back to the emerald tablets with this, and you can go back and you can read it yourself. And it was this excerpt that I always love, which is, the children of light has asked the children of men to hold their light. So if you think about that, if you are holding your light, Natasha, and you are holding your light, David, and I'm holding my light, and those of us who are light workers are holding our light, right? What happens when you flicker a lighter in a dark cave? The cave is no longer dark. Right? So yes, we are going through chaotic times, but if we're all holding our light, those of us who are awake are holding our light in the midst of this craziness and the darkness, and we are the witness, but those who want to come out of the storm will come in and hold their light too. They'll hold it alongside you. And we already know that when light workers get together and they are all focused on one thing, it physically changes situations. It physically makes an impact. Clouds can clear. It changes the energy levels by which we're being bombarded with.
Yeah.
Right? So if we all at a minimum held our light, we become the transducers. And then that who wants to align with us becomes that transducer with you. And then it's just like a fractal, right? When the fractal first breaks apart, it's in chaos. And then what does it do? It organizes until it harmonizes. And right now we're in the midst of that fractal. And it just broke. And so we are witnessing that which needs to harmonize and organize. And it will in time. Because we are a planet of cycles, we are beings of cycles. Now,
Absolutely. No, I agree. There's so much to unpack there. And I agree with you. Every day we choose. Every day we choose how we show up. Every day we choose what directions we can go in as well. So it's quite important. And I think stepping into that space of observation is a great tool to get to know who you are and to uncover that story as well. Because it's like, wait a minute, why is my body reacting in that way, right? And it's like, what is that story am I telling myself? And is that true? Because a lot of the times it's not even true, the stories that we tell ourselves as well, which is important. And then you also spoke about listening. So listening to ourselves, a lot of the times as well is how often do we lie to ourselves where we're not actually truly listening to ourselves as well, which is the aspect of looking at that and uncovering that, because we try and make everything like okay, right? And it's like you say, sometimes that chaos needs to come in so that we can reorganize even ourselves, right? That is there, which is important. And the other aspect of listening, I think, as light workers, as you know, I suppose healers, as people who do this work, it's so rare that people listen with the intent of hearing instead of listening with the intent of answering. And I think just being seen and being heard in itself is healing, like you say. And it's that aspect of, I think we're here really to also get to know who we are. And everybody is a mirror towards us too. So it's quite beautiful in the sense that, so recently I've been looking at what aspects of them is me, or am I is them, you know, kind of a thing. So it's like, you know, like, who am I? Like, it's like we say, we're all aspects of creating, experiencing ourselves in this form through this lens, right? But it's all these mirrors that come up to us, and it's kind of like, so who are you? Who is that? Who am I in that person? Who's that person in me? Which is quite beautiful, because then we don't start to see that difference, because we start to celebrate the differences as well. Because the other thing is I also truly believe that what you admire in somebody else, you admire it because somewhere within you it's there. Otherwise you wouldn't see it. You don't have that capacity, right? Which is absolutely, I like looking at that aspect of things as well. But that giving yourselves grace, and I think that breaking those patterns are important, because the more we ignore them, the more they show up. So it's choose them, you know, like say, okay, I choose to see you. What are we going to do about this moving forward, right? You know, it's kind of like making that different choice, as you say, which opens up those contracts, deals, and agreements in another perspective as well. Right, which I think is absolutely beautiful. So it's awesome that there is a framework and a process that you've created to be able to do that as well. I think is very, very important to look at that. And it's not for the faint-hearted, right? Because it's like having that truth of looking at yourself is that truth of looking at yourself, right? And I remember a lot of people, say, for example, during COVID, a lot of people suffered because they were forced to sit and look at themselves, because there was no distractions, there was no doing stuff for other people, but you had to sit with yourself, right? And I think that also opened up the opportunity to really start to do that healing, because I honestly believe that when we heal for ourselves, we're healing for our lineage, the 7 generations before, the 7 generations to come, and just doing that helps on a collective aspect in raising the frequency of the collective. So not like we need to go out and do these grand gestures, although we can if we're being called to it, but it can be as simple as just doing that work ourselves. So that is a very great reminder that when we heal ourselves, we're healing the collective on a bigger scheme of things, which is beautiful.
Yeah, so what I've shared with you are the tools. So there are actual 7 principles that I've pulled together. They're from my different teachers of self-mastery. And the first one starts with the power of words, and to start sensitizing people about what they're saying, because what you're speaking into truth, you're speaking into fruition. And we could take that really, really deeply, and as deep as the person needs to go, because we've forgotten as as human beings, how powerful we are and how powerful what we say we are. And I say that because in ancient times, let's go all the way back to Egypt, right? Certain words were reserved to only the priests and the priestesses, because when they spoke them out loud, they commanded such power, and they were only used in ceremony, right? But here we are, fast forward this day, and we say things so carelessly, and we use things so carelessly. Oh, I heard this ceremony and they said blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, that's not the appropriate time, nor should you be talking about it or even revealing it out of context by which it was meant to be shared, and the auspiciousness of why it was reserved. We don't think about that. And, part of the work that I've done, and I'll share some of the books if we have time, is to start sensitizing people back to understanding how deeply important it is to understand the power of our words. And then the second principle is to redefine fear. And I have my definition of fear, because fear is just making that which is uncomfortable comfortable. And we have a choice. And when you choose to stay in fear, you're just choosing to ensure that that particular aspect is uncomfortable. Okay. And so we could deep dive into that. And then we go into judgment, how judgment is projected from others, how we project judgment to others, and how we project judgment to ourselves, and how we give away our power in the process. Because we do give away our power every day. And then the fourth principle is limited beliefs. And we always talk about getting out of our own way, but what does getting out of our own way mean? It means the limited belief system you have put in place to keep yourself a certain size so that you always feel like you can operate comfortably. And when you want to expand that, it's always a challenge, because, hey, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I'm comfortable here. This is where the limits of how far I've always traveled. And if I don't understand what's on that other side of that limit, well, that makes me uncomfortable. And then we jump back into fear, right? Because we have to expand our boundaries to expand those limits. I believe this because that's where I'm comfortable believing. If I have to expand it to all of this believing, that leaves too much uncertainty there. And I don't want to have that uncertainty. I have to have assuredness. So that limited belief system. And then forgiveness, because it's not necessarily always about forgiving others more than it's about forgiving ourselves. Because when we don't forgive, then we look through the veil of the pain all the time. And you can't see life without the veil of that pain, because that pain is always ever present. So you literally taint part of your vision of life until you forgive. Whether it's forgiveness of others or forgiveness of self, you're tainting it. And then what happens is that when you have that part of yourself that you can't release because you want to hold on to the negativity of it, you're literally hurting yourself in that. And then after that is, where do I hold my power? How do I source my power from where I hold it? And I need to be able to pull and draw from that power of who I am. Well, I shared with you where that power comes from. We have to go beyond the humanness, come to the source of who we are, and draw from there, beyond the humanness. That's what makes me powerful. And then the seventh principle, is I am powerful. And it's not about power over anybody, but it's about the fact that I can now dissect the stories and the makeup that anyone throws at me, because I have the tools and I have the ability to navigate and identify the point of origin, the pain points, the vulnerability of how you're trying to poke me, the agenda behind the stories. I can see through it now. So what makes me powerful is that I can dissect and navigate my way past your stories and your projections and your judgments and your ability to try to make me fearful. That's what makes me powerful, that I can navigate all of it and you can't pin me down.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, we just see things fall into place because we've truly, truly faced ourselves. And I love to call it like a divine alignment or conscious coherence. Because we can look in ourselves in the mirror and accept all aspects of ourselves, that our vulnerabilities, whether they become our strengths or not, can't be used against us because we've faced it already. And if we've faced it, how can we be hurt by it? We've looked at it. So if you're insecure and you go, oh, I don't know this so much, and I go, well, you don't know blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, you got a point there, but what's your point? And were you trying to hurt me with those words? Because I've looked at myself that way. Yeah, that's me. And your point is? It's beautiful. It's beautiful work.
Yeah.
It's beautiful work if you choose to take the journey.
And closing that circle of the 7 principles, I think it brings you to the freedom and pursuit of wisdom, but without this attachment to the value of a role, the attachment of the value of a story, the attachment of the value of the expectations of everyone. So that is just pure wisdom about the world, as you mentioned. And I think that's when we tap into the power of connecting with nature, because that's the only force that can align with us in that aspect. No,
It's nature and it's harmonics, because really when you're able to do that, then you've gone to the next octave, right? You play the piano, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and then it repeats do, but this time you're a little bit smarter because you've already gone through the first the seven musical notes, so you can go the next octave or go to the quadrivium, the next level up, and really be ready to embrace it, because in accepting all those aspects of yourself, then you get to traverse your own inner verse, let alone the universe, and really truly go deep. And then you go deeper, and then you go another octave, and then you go deeper and you go another octave. And it's a beautiful journey. It's a beautiful journey that you get to embrace.
And I love how when you do go deeper in that way, the external starts to shift to match that, right? So it's even though that starts to change. So it really is, it's rarely about changing the outside world. It's the changing the inside world to be able to change the outside world. We have to make those changes ourselves. We need to be that change, right?
Exactly.
So it's really embracing that.
Natasha and I are doing this kind of deep work, and we are helping each other to discover these patterns and to discover these stories and unravel them. And as we are doing this work each week, we are changing the external landscape of the work that we are giving to other people in both our worlds, even though with the separation, the physical separation. We have been experiencing a lot of things that we were not aware of, let's say, but they were happening, let's say, in the background, and now we can see them, because I think, and now I go back to your analogy of the light and the cave, we are bringing light to the cave, no?
It's our inner cave and our outer cave. We're accustomed to the outer cave and trying to figure it out there, but it's the bringing light to the inner cave. So like I know when my insecure woman is forward. I know when my strong woman is forward. I know when my people-pleasing woman is forward, and I know when my confident woman is forward, and I know how to call forward my confident woman when insecure woman is kind of there and it's like, oh my gosh, this is not serving me. How I'm behaving is not serving me. Go to the back. I need confident woman right now, you know? And it's not like cutting off a part of yourself. You can't do that. You have to recognize the aspect that's forward. My insecure woman's forward, and I have to say, nope, you're not serving me now. I can call upon my more confident woman. That's something I can control. Who I choose to project and bring forward to lead me through life, the situation, the circumstance, the relationship, and honor that.
Yeah.
Honor that.
Beautiful. You wanted to share, and you spoke about the books that you have published. So if you want to share the, let's say, the main idea of each of the books that you have, I think it's the right moment right now.
Okay, so one of the books that I wrote in conjunction with my friend Bukeka Blakemore is The Sovereignty of Worth: Conscience, Coherence, and the True Self. And I love this book because we talk about not only do we have to look at our own self-worth, but we have to understand that the systems set up around us help define and impress upon us what we should feel our worth is. And we forget to look at how the systems impact us. And so the sovereignty of worth truly allows you to take a deep dive in looking at not only your own self-worth and how to come to your core, but the systems, to be cognizant of the systems that help shape and that help impact that, all the way down to current day. You know, and I always love using the entertainment system as an example because my co-author is a entertainer, and like auditions are called cattle calls. No, no, lips too big, lips too small, hair's too this, blah, blah, blah. Next, next, next. How does that make a person feel? You know, that the system is set up that hurts us too. We don't think about how people feel through these systems that we've built, that we say, oh, these are the cornerstone of how we select people and if they're good enough. And, you know, if you're not selected, the impact, the unspoken impact of residual that defines the person who got impacted by it. So that's what that book is about. And I think it's really, really important right now with everything that people are going through. And all of these books are available on my website, which is enolia.live, or Amazon, or any of the vendors. They're worldwide. They're all digital right now. And a couple of paperbacks. I also have I wrote with a dear friend of mine, Tracy Scherer, The Alchemical Path of Yoga and the 7 Steps to Conscious Coherence. And this is not a typical yoga book. It's not going to teach you how to move. It's not going to teach you how to meditate. It's going to teach you that now, since you've been in yoga, where do you take it? And where have you taken it? Because when you map yoga against alchemy, you're supposed to take it to conscious coherence. And so this book helps you take every stage to the steps to give you a footpath and a vision to hold in front of yourself of conscious coherence and how we would lead you there. So that's the alchemical path of yoga. And then I rewrote a modern restoration of the 1946 Sister Miriam Joseph's book of the Trivium. And the Trivium is grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And Sister Mary Joseph wrote it from Aristotle. Okay? And it literally teaches you how to break down words and understand the logic by which people are executing. Have you ever listened to, let's take politicians because they're good at it, right? You ever listen to a politician and they make a statement, you know, all men are human. David is a man, so David must be human, right? That's a syllogism, right? But if you put that in a perspective of something else and you go, well, wait a minute, I don't know if I agree with that. You're not quite sure what logic they just used with you. You're like, David is human, but I don't know about saying I know he's human and I know he's a man, but wait, I don't know how the two connect, and it's the logic. We don't know how to break down logic anymore. We don't know how to break down the parts of what is being viewed at us so that you say what you mean and you really, really mean what you say. Words are twisted and the logic is twisted and it's imposed. And because we haven't taken the time to study, which trivium is part of the 7 liberal arts, and the other, it's the first part, it's the first 3 subjects, right? Anything that you learn, you have to learn the grammar of it. If you're learning engineering speak, you have to learn the grammar of engineering speak. If you're learning business speak, you have to learn the grammar of business speak. Then you have to learn its logic, and then you have the rhetoric. You have the ability to regurgitate it back, right? And then you have the quadrivium, which is the vibration of number, geometry, the vibration of geometry. And I'm not saying the theorems of geometry or the calculations of number. I'm talking about the vibration of them. Okay? Mm-hmm. Harmonics and then cosmology. Okay? And what happens is that the trivium prepares us to understand masterworks. Because when you can break down the grammar, the logic, and the rhetoric, then you can introduce the higher levels of understanding because you can break down what they are saying to you and the logic that they're using behind it. And so when we looked at apprentice relationships, how the apprentice was there for 2 years, they had to master the trivium. And then when they were allowed to be the mason, that meant that they could understand the quadrivium, which was like in masonry, the sacred geometries of how a building is laid, how an arch is done, how that 7.86 is bringing down from the heavens, that arch is bringing down from the heavens, the sacred geometries of what is taking place, the harmonics of the cycles of music, of the planets, of the geometries, of the numbers. And behind all of it is almost like a introduction to metaphysics, right? Because it really brings you to that next octave. So I have the trivium out. I actually will be bringing out the quadrivium. It's written. I just going to do the forward, and that'll be out in a month. Okay. And then those are my latest books. And then I have How I Found My Enolia, Finding My Sovereign Voice with My Grandmother Elder. It's my story about how I started on my journey. And I think it's really important because people want to hear the story of that transition from corporate to an entrepreneur and how I broke free of that corporate structure. And it's literally my story. And I have the comparable journal to it, which what it does is it summarizes every chapter with the lessons learned. And then you can learn from my story. And then I ask you the pertinent questions in your life so you can get started on your journey, because those questions would lead you right into EAS. And then I actually have the 7 principles of self-mastery and the stories behind how I came up with each principle. So you can meet the teachers who taught me those principles and how I learned them. So yeah, all of this is there, and I love to write and I love to teach. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share about those.
Oh, you're welcome. I think each of us deserves an episode on this podcast. So we can unpack each of those books so that we can also promote the wisdom about them. And it's
love it.
It's just beautiful. And the one that stayed with me right now, probably because I'm happening through this moment with my daughter, is the one about the sovereign voice that you mentioned. Because my daughter right now is facing the change from elementary school to the high school level, but we are not sure if she's resonating with the model of education, because as you mentioned, since they are children, they are stuck in these squares, and they are labeled and they are judged and they are limited, let's say, in that aspect. And I think she has such a rebel spirit that she's not matching these things, so she's getting bored, and she's
Yeah.
getting also, let's say, menospreciated or devalued. And I don't want that for her, because she's gonna lose all interest about learning. And that is what I'm witnessing also with higher levels, that many young people are losing the interest on learning just because the system has turned the light off completely. So
Yeah.
this book, I think it's also great. If it is not for children yet, we can translate that as an adult, as a father or as a mother, to our children, and try to help them to find their own voice and their own guide, no?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You're right. And the biggest thing that will always help her is knowing that you're there,
Yeah.
and that she can explore other ways of expressing herself and gleaning her path, knowing that she has the support to explore and to glean and to test. I remember somebody always saying to me, "You think the rules were made for everybody except you?" And my answer was always, "Yep, I do," because I was that spirit too, testing. Because if it doesn't make sense to me, why should I follow it blindly? I'm not that person. I will not follow things blindly. It has to make sense to me. And if it doesn't make sense to me, well, who made that rule? Because that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And where did it come from? And then, why can't it change?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if it can't change, I'll build my own system and I'll create different rules. And it's okay to do that. I was coaching a young lady who was a chef. And we understand in the chef world, the head chef is always typically arrogant, nasty, and just a force to be reckoned with, of entitlement. And she hated it. And I was like, well, create your own kitchen and change the dynamics of what you want to see in it. You don't have to adhere to that system. And make the name for yourself. And people will flock to you because they thrive for something different. Who wants to be in that? And the ones who are attracted to that, well, so be it. That's where they want to thrive. That's where they want to thrive. But I guarantee you, if you create something different, they'll flock to it. And they did. And it's beautiful because she has a pop-up restaurant, and she does pop-up restaurant for different corporate events. And she works when she wants to work. And she has the family that she calls upon to work with her. So as the old paradox break down, it's wonderful. Sorry.
That is wonderful. I was going to say, we'll definitely have you back on again. If you could sum up, maybe give somebody kind of like a word of advice or a suggestion to make that shift. What is the first small step that people can take into making that shift?
Dream a beautiful dream, or you will be dreamt. If you don't hold a vision for yourself, for life to become a walk to that vision, then you will live your life always trying to abide by what people perceive you to be.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's
wonderful.
Perfect advice for many people. Thank you, Enolia, for such a pleasure and such a heavy session of wisdom that we could unpack and talk about all of your books. So finally, could you repeat where people can find everything about you?
Yes, I am on my website, which is Enolia, my name, Enolia.live, Live, really simple.
Yeah.
And then I'm on Facebook, Enolia. and loves infinite possibility. Okay. I'm on YouTube at Enolia Energy and also at The Infinite Way, Enolia. Okay. I'm on Instagram, Enolia Empowers, LinkedIn, Enolia Empowers. So all of the social medias, and there's not that many Enolias, and then you'll see my picture. And it's me in a blue and yellow dress, so you can't miss that it's me.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for such a
Thank
great
you.
session.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us. It's very grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. And I guess that probably you will have more than one question to ask Enolia. So please share all your questions. We will forward them to her. And of course, follow us and rate us in all the channels. We are also in Spotify, in Apple Podcast, in Substack, and you can always suggest guests, of course. Thank you, and we will listen to each other on our next episode. Bye.
Bye, everyone.